What's up, guys? This is Coach Grant with First Down Training, and today we're going to be talking about 8 traits of a D1 wide receiver. So the first trait is that a D1 wide receiver is very, very good at catching the ball downfield. They're a downfield threat, and that comes down to being able to be consistent with your hands on over-the-shoulder passes. So this is a great clip from Amon-Ra St. Brown here at Lions training camp. So this ball's thrown over the shoulder, and I want you to pay attention to his eyes on this. I get a ton of questions from receivers about how they can be more consistent in situations like this, and most of the time, I would say probably 95% of drops for wide receivers come from not having good eye discipline. So eye discipline is when that football, and it's super important on deep passes or over-the-shoulder passes, eye discipline is when that football makes contact with your hands. You want to try to take a photo of the ball with your eyes. You want to pretend your eyes are a camera and you were taking a photo of the ball. The only thing in your line of vision should be the football. It shouldn't be the football and then you're worried about getting your feet in bounds. Shouldn't be the football and then you're worried about just where you're at on the field. The only thing in your line of vision takes up your whole entire vision, like a self-portrait that you'd put on like a desk of somebody. It should be the football. So you want to pretend that you take that snapshot photo with your eyes, and that can help you be more consistent with over-the-shoulder passes, but that goes for any pass. If you're a receiver who struggles catching the ball consistently, which is something you have to be able to do, if you're trying to stand out, playing at the Division I level is extremely hard, you guys. At any college level, it's hard. And if you want to be a college receiver to stand out amongst other receivers, you got to be consistent with the ball. We have to be able to trust that we could throw the ball to you over the middle on short passes and downfield. And the best way to be consistent with that is trusting your eyes and taking that photo. Now, fellas, before we get into the rest of these traits, if you are a wide receiver watching this or a quarterback and you'd like to train with myself and my staff of coaches this offseason, we are traveling out to 15 different locations across the entire U.S. for 2-day-long QB and wide receiver training camp. So, guys, if you go to that very first link in the description below, that is where you can sign up. Our next camp is going to be in San Francisco. Then we'll be heading out to Orlando, Phoenix, Columbia, South Carolina, Seattle, Oklahoma City, Nashville, Tennessee, Milwaukee, Wisconsin, Austin, Texas, Atlanta, Georgia, Denver, Colorado, Columbus, Ohio, Boston, Massachusetts, Salt Lake City, and then finishing it off in Los Angeles, California. So, guys, if you are local to any one of these cities or would like to travel out, we'd love to have you out to our camp. It's 2 days worth of training, and our camps do sell out, you guys. They sell out probably 3 months in advance simply because we limit spots so each athlete can get individualized coaching. So if you want to improve your skills, you want to get better, this is the camp for that. This isn't some exposure camp. This isn't a college camp. We're there to help your guys' skills improve for 2 full days, and we can't do that if we have just a million people out there. So we limit spots, and all these camps are starting to fill up, you guys. So, fellas, make sure you take advantage of that. Go to that very first link in the description below. That is where you can sign up. Now, the second trait of a D1 wide receiver is a violent hip drop at the top of the route. And so this is going to build into the next trait, which is an acceleration out of the break. But we're going to talk about this first so you guys can kind of simplify it. We're going to break this top of the route break into 2 specific parts. So this is just a simple stop route, right? If you don't know what a stop route is, some people might call it like a sticks route where let's say it's 3rd and 8 and they're having you just put the brakes on at 10 yards and the ball's right there. It's like a deeper hitch route and the ball should be thrown really on your outside shoulder, especially if you have a DB who's inside leverage like this. Now, on every single route, what do you have to do as a receiver? You have to be able to sell vertical. And selling vertical comes down to really 3 things, I would say. It comes down to your speed frequency, your stride frequency, and your body language. A lot of you have heard me say that before. It's not necessarily about running 100% into the break as fast as you can. It's like a controlled full speed. It's like 95%. Because if you're running 100%, it's very, very hard to stop without taking a bunch of extra steps at the top of the break or drifting at the top of the break. And then what you have to focus on is your stride frequency. A lot of receivers, they'll come off with really good strides. Then right before they break down, they start taking these happy feet steps. That just tells a DB that a break is coming. We don't want any indicators. So you slowing down, you shortening your strides, and you raising up with your chest so you could drop down. Those are all indicators. You want a slight forward lean with your pad level like this receiver has here. Treat it like you guys are pulling a sled. I'm sure some of you guys have seen a sled, like a speed sled. If not, maybe think of it like a speed parachute. You see guys run with a parachute. You can't do that standing straight up. You don't have your chest up. You don't have your chin up. You have a slight forward lean. Now, why do I explain all of that? I explain all of that because to be able to sell vertical, when you guys drop into a break, if you want to do it effectively, you got to be violent with your hips. What does that mean? That's exactly what this receiver does here. You have to drop your hips aggressively. The days of wide receivers at the top of the route beating the drum, quote unquote, where you take a bunch of choppy steps and you move your hands as fast as you can, that's slow, you guys. The DB position gets more and more talented every single year. You see it on social media. There are tons of talented DB coaches We're very, very good. DBs are starting to get quality training. They're disciplined. They're not just great athletes, but they're also playing more disciplined football. So as a receiver, if I spend too much time at the break point, I'm not going to be able to compete, especially at a high level of college football. So I need to be violent. So what you guys want to think of is I tell receivers, you want to play musical chairs. When the music stops, you want to sit into the chair. And you want to do that as quickly as you can. You want to sit to a 90-degree angle. That's the magic spot. You don't want to be below 90 because then you can't move. And you don't want to be above 90 because when you're moving with that kind of speed and you try to break down, but your center of gravity doesn't drop, you're going to either drift forward or take a lot of steps, and that lets a DB recover. So we have to drop to that 90-degree angle as violently as we can. The goal point is you want to try to bring your chin down to your knee. You're probably not actually going to touch your chin to your knee, but that's what you want to do as far as your upper half goes, because you can't sit down and have your chest straight up in the air. You're going to be leaning back, and your break will be slow. You want to think sit into the chair, music stops, you sit down as quickly as you can, you bring your chin to your knee as quickly as you can, like there's a string attached to your chin and somebody pulls that string straight down. And trust me, guys, your breaks will get more explosive, but you have to be able to break like that if you're going to compete against a DB who's a high-level DB. Against a scrub, you could probably just not even sell vertical and still be able to get separation. But at this level of college football, which is what this video is about, you need to be able to have that type of break. So let's play this thing again full speed, and then we'll get to the next variation of a break where you have to drop your hips, which is the acceleration phase. Now, this is actually a bad example, okay, you guys? Because I think sometimes showing clips on film where the receiver maybe doesn't do it correctly is a better way for wide receivers to maybe learn. Because you guys have all seen the great routes, but a lot of times we don't necessarily post routes that are like bad or maybe could improve in a couple different areas. So this receiver does everything right. He's running a comeback route, which is another route where you guys have to drop your hips. The routes where you have to drop your hips are like 5-yard hitches, a stop route, a curl, a comeback. Some teams do it on like a dig route. A lot of teams nowadays, though, are doing more so speed cuts on dig routes where you just like take one step and get out of it, which I think is realistic and I think personally is a little faster. But there are routes where you have to drop your hips, and especially at the next level, they're going to require you to run a full route tree, which means you're going to have to know how to get in and out of these types of breaks. And they're not going to necessarily take the time to explain it in detail like how we explain it. They expect you to know this type of stuff, right? So this receiver does everything right. He attacks the DB's leverage, he sells vertical, snaps down violently, but the problem is that he's not getting out of the break fast enough, which is why the ball was thrown in front of him. Could it have been a better throw? Probably, but I think he could have been out of this faster, and that's why you guys want to pay attention to your hands. So the third trait of a D1 wide receiver is you need to have a good acceleration phase out of your break. So when he breaks down, you see he's got that violent drop. He sits into the chair, right? His chin is going down to his knee. He's violent with his hips. He's selling vertical. But you see how his hands go dead. Now, this is the thing. Like I said before, where a lot of old school coaches teach beat the drum. You get to the break point, move your hands super fast because that'll make your feet move fast and you'll stay active and get out of the break. That takes too much time. Now, a lot of receivers go the opposite way too far. They go dead with their hands. I call this briefcasing it, like you're setting a briefcase down on the ground. But the thing is, your hands aren't natural. And when your hands stop like that, your feet also stop like that, and that's why he gets stuck right here on his outside foot just a little bit, but that could screw up the timing. At a college level, guys, QBs throw the ball so insanely early because they're dealing with an insane pass rush, especially if you don't have the best offensive line. So timing is everything. So at the break point, guys, to have a good acceleration phase, you want to keep your hands natural. You want to run into the break, run out of the break. I want to have the same speed out of the break that I had going into it. The hip drop just helps you change direction. So guys, you want to keep your hands natural. Don't stop your hands, because when you stop your hands, you're not getting out fast enough, and it's going to screw up the quarterback's timing. So the third trait is having a good acceleration phase. Do not briefcase it at the top. If you do briefcase it at the top, make sure your hands get moving right after the fact. Don't have them die there for a second, because then we will get stuck. Now, this next trait of a D1 wide receiver is being able to run a double move effectively by separating, okay? So everybody knows what a double move is, and this is actually a bad example. This is Bijan Robinson, who's a running back, right? So you kind of give him a little bit of the benefit of the doubt. He's not necessarily as polished of a route runner as maybe a receiver would be, but he's running a slant and go. So this applies for any receiver on any double move, because again, guys, routes get more complex at the next level. They're going to ask you to run an out and up. They're going to ask you to run a slant and go, a hitch and go, a stop and go that's a little bit deeper. And so the key is when you get a DB to bite on the first move, which is easy to do if you sell it, you need to be focused focused on separating, not just getting open on the double move and then looking back for the ball right away. So let's play this full speed. So he breaks to the slant, right? Gets that DB to crash, but you see how he's looking back for the ball right away. That's why it's overthrown right there, you guys. So you guys, when you guys get separation on a double move, whether you're dropping your hips and the DB crashes, whether you're selling a slant, whether you're selling an out route, when you guys break back vertical, your thought process needs to be, I am going to separate from this DB. So when you guys look back for the ball, we all can agree when you're running with your head like this, you're going to be running slower. And when a DB is putting his head down, oh crap, I got beat, he's going to be running faster than us. He's going to allow us to catch up. But more importantly, the QB is putting it to a spot. At the next level, you guys need to get used to that. QBs are no longer throwing to you. They're throwing to a spot, and they expect us to get there. And at the next level, if you can't get there as a receiver, they're going to find somebody who will get there. So if you guys are looking back for the ball too early, you're not going to catch up to that spot. He would have been able to catch up to this ball, which was overthrown by literally 2 yards. Guys, 2 yards is not a big margin. If after he makes that break to the vertical portion of this route, if he put his head down, pumped his arms hard, then looked back for the ball, he would have caught up to this thing. So guys, you need to have that mindset on double moves. They're going to ask you to run double moves at the next level. They're going to want to see if you could run double moves at a camp, right? So when you guys do this, you want to make sure that you're polished because that's what they're looking for a threat downfield. Now, the next thing that D1 wide receivers need to understand, the next trait that they need to have is they need to understand where they're at on the field. So this kind of goes against what I was just teaching. This wide receiver is running a corner route. Now, again, guys, a lot of times at receiver, like these things that I talk about are not necessarily one size fits all for every single play. You have to be able to adjust your game at times based on where you're at on the field and based on the offense that you run. There are certain routes where you have to take a mandatory outside release or a mandatory inside release versus press. So look at this receiver. He's very wide. He's not lined up on the hash. He's running a 10 to 12 yard corner route. I think it's like 15 yards, right? And he's kind of a little bit closer to the numbers. So he's lined up out wide. His split is for sure reduced down, but he's still wide. So he has inside shade press. So if he has to run this corner route, they're having him run almost like a box corner where you go inside 5, up to 10, break, and then end up at 15. But if we were to take the outside release on this, my quarterback wouldn't have a ton of room to throw me open simply because of how wide I am on the field. Again, a trait of a D1 wide receiver is you need to have a high football IQ. So this receiver kind of forces that inside release, then he pushes up vertical, gives a move, and look at all the space he gave his quarterback, right? That is the key right there. Sure, he starts out going to the outside a little bit, but he gives a move, then he works back to the inside. I'd like to see him just work to the inside right away, so maybe this is a little bit faster, but he doesn't force that outside release. He gives his quarterback room to throw him open. Guys, you have to have an understanding of spacing if you're going to play at the next level. Because remember, like I said, you have to run your routes exactly how they're drawn up on paper because the quarterback is expecting on this type of throw a lot of space to be able to put the ball out there with some air and lead us on that corner route. Now, the next thing that all D1 wide receivers are able to do is they're able to run their routes, single move routes versus awkward or uncomfortable coverage looks. So this wide receiver is going to be running just a simple 10-yard post. It's a very, very skinny post. Some people might refer to this as a glance route, but he's got a DB who's inside leverage, off-man coverage. So that's the thing. At the next level, guys, you got to have some type of IQ as a wide receiver. That's the main portion that we do these videos. Every single Monday, we do videos where we break down film, right? And the reason why we do it is just so you guys have a better understanding of how to run your routes versus different coverages, right? So if this DB's lined up inside shade, we know what's his responsibility being inside leverage, to not let us get to the inside. He does not want us to run a dig, a curl, or a post, right? So we know that. Pre-snap, we come to the line, we see his leverage, we know that. The next thing you have to pay attention to as a receiver is his leverage. So is he inside leverage? Is he head up? Or excuse me, you got to pay attention to leverage, but the second thing you want to pay attention to is his distance. How close or how far away is he? If he's inside shade right up on the ball, you would run that route differently than if he's inside shade 8 yards off the ball, 7 yards off the ball, however far back he is. And then same thing, if he's 3 to 4 yards off the ball, you would run your route differently that way. So let's talk about inside shade press. If he's inside shade press, you'd attack his leverage, you'd work to take the outside release, and your goal is to stack and then break. Or if he's right on your hip running with you, you would throw him by and cut back underneath him, right? That's how you'd run versus inside shade press. That's your thought process when you see that at the line. Now when he's inside shade off man, I know, okay, I'm not worried about a release. My goal is to attack his outside shoulder, outside hip, get him to flip open and think we're running a fade, and then cut back underneath him. That's really the only option you have. A lot of receivers in this situation will start to stem to the inside and try to attack a DB's midline. But a disciplined DB, because again, guys, at the next level, these DBs are more and more disciplined. You start to attack his leverage inside, he's going to weave, and he's going to keep his leverage to the inside, then your post is going to run right into him, or you're going to keep moving to the inside, and then your post is going to be way the hell on the other side of the field. We can't run it like that. We have to run the post exactly how it's drawn up on paper and exactly the type of spacing that we need on the play. So let's watch what this receiver does. He stems inside initially. I'm going to play this full speed. So he comes back, right? So he comes off the ball, stems inside initially, then goes at that DB's outside shoulder, gets him to flip his hips, and then he's able to win on that post. So let's play this thing again, full speed one more time. Reason why he attacks his leverage is to make it look even more like a fade. This is a very, very advanced route because a lot of receivers, what they'll do is they'll just take off and run straight at this guy's outside shoulder and outside hip. That's not exactly how you'd run a fade versus this coverage, right? And again, at the next level, you have to be able to, you got to be a little bit more creative with your routes because DBs are not going to bite on the most basic things. So a lot of guys will just run at the outside shoulder and just pray that this dude's opens up. But if he's smart and he's disciplined, he's thinking, all right, that dude never runs a fade like that. I'm going to stay patient. But if you maybe stem to the inside initially like he does, then work your way to the outside, that's how you'd run your fade. And that's what's going to get that DB to overcommit. That's what's going to get him to open up his hips because that actually looks like your fade route. This is called pairing your routes together. So I'm going to play this full speed one more time, guys. You have to be able to run uncomfortable routes versus uncomfortable leverage looks at the next level. Now, the final trait of a D1 wide receiver is you need to be physical at the top of the route. So this wide receiver is running an out route. Now, this out route isn't necessarily a mandatory inside release out route because he's trying to give us some space. He's cut down a little bit further to the inside than the last example. So what he's going to do is he's going to attack this DB's leverage inside and take this outside release. However, what we don't want to do in this case is attack the leverage and then run away from this guy. We have to try to get my hip right past his hip. That's called getting skinny. So I could either stack this DB or I can be physical and try to lean into him with my upper body. Again, guys, you're going to be going up against physical DBs who are disciplined at the next level, and you have to be able to do this. So let's play this full speed. So he gives a move to the inside, takes this outside release, and you see how he's kind of leaning into this guy because one, that gives the quarterback room. Two, that's how we can get separation. So the key always versus press coverage is to stack. Right? I want to give him a release to the inside. I want him to bite on the release. I want to get my hip right past his hip so I could get over the top of him, top of the break. Maybe I give a little head and shoulder fake to the inside, or a hip fake, I should say. And then I break to the out route, and I gave the quarterback room, and I got separation. If I can't do that, you guys, you got to do what this receiver does. He gets right into his hip. You see how he's not afraid of the contact. He's leaning his body into him. He's not going straight to the out route and rounding this thing. So when he cuts, he could lean and almost push off without pushing off, and that can get you separation. So guys, you have to be a physical receiver to play at the next level, no matter what your size is, because you're going to be going up against DBs who are also physical and, again, disciplined. And these are the types of things that will get you separation and help you to be able to stand out.